German rearmament. The Germans had been rearming already. The Weimar government had been rearming more subtly. They'd been building submarine simulators. They'd been they signed the treaty of Rapallo to train their troops in Russia and the Soviet Union. They'd been adapting training pilots in the civilian air force so they could easily be adapted to the Luftwaffe. So what else have they been doing? Yeah, that was about it really. But obviously, when Hitler came to power, he stepped up that rate almost immediately. His economic advisor Helmut Schacht devised some schemes whereby they could rearm really quickly. Dummy companies were set up, and the British knew this was going on. They always had, but what could they do about it without going to war? So that was still secret, though. He took Germany out of the World Disarmament Conference and pulled out the League of Nations as well, even though he was saying that there's no one desired peace more than he did. It was a blatant lie. Once he pulled them out of the World Disarmament Conference, he held a plebiscite in which the people of Germany confirmed that that was the right thing to do, so he gained a victory there. And then he signed a pact with Poland, which bought him time, although it surprised quite a lot of people. Now, then he had another boost in confidence with another plebiscite in 1935, where the Tsar voted to return to Germany. The people there voted that they wanted to become German, because that's what the Treaty of Versailles said, that the Tsar was to be controlled by the League of Nations with French access for 15 years. That 15 years was up. They voted return to Germany. Hitler was more confident now. He announced that he was rearming. So up to that point he'd been doing it secretly, although people knew about it. He then announced that he was actually going to introduce conscription, that he'd got submarines, that he's building an air force, and that he's not going to abide by the terms of the Treaty of Versailles. The League of Nations did nothing, and the British did nothing. They already decided that they were going to have to make agreements limiting his arms bilaterally rather than through the League of Nations, as the disarmament conference failed. So by 1936, Germany were catching up especially with the Air Force, which the British were most worried about because of an idea of an attack on London. And from about 100 planes to 2,500 planes in 2 years, Hitler had increased very, very rapidly. He did actually exaggerate the amount that he had increased it, just to scare people, and to try and stave off attacks from other countries. But he definitely was rearming very quickly. Some people believe, though, that Hitler would be tamed by his power, and that he would be not the Hitler that wrote Mein Kampf, asking for living space, and some of his ideas in there on what he should do, what the Germans should do. They thought he would be tamed by power and that they could control him, and that there were others in Germany that would be able to put the brakes on him. The French didn't do anything about Hitler, or Hitler's rearmament. They'd had 3 changes of government in the early 30s, and they'd also settled on this idea that they were going to sit behind the Maginot Line, and became quite defensive. So their plans with the Little Entente agreements with Czechoslovakia and Poland in the east, and also Russia later on, the Little Entente didn't actually sit well with their military strategy, because that was defensive, whereas their diplomatic treaties were to encircle Germany. So obviously sitting behind the Maginot Line if Czechoslovakia got invaded wasn't going to help, and obviously that comes to fruition in the later 30s. So France really needed Britain, and Britain needed its empire. So Britain were never going to be able to give France that guarantee. And to be fair, a lot of people in Britain still were not sure about whether Hitler was the real enemy, or whether it was Russia and communism, or even Japan in the Far East as a threat to Britain's empire. So, yes, he was allowed to rearm, and nothing was done other than to put limitations on it with the Anglo-German Naval Agreement, which is coming up next.